And buenos dias, GnGs. My name is Trekkw2ks. Welcome to another episode of Week in Crypto, brought to you here on the Gentleman of Crypto YouTube channel. If you don't know, the basic idea is I cover weekend crypto news that is on a Friday to Sunday, and the stories or the headlines that catch my attention, and I spit them out with a no price talk filter Monday morning 08. If you don't understand what the no price talk means, it means I'm not doing chart stuff. I'm not telling you about coins, none of that stuff. We got other people who do that. King does that. Black Rude does that. The Stat Bros do that. Simonson family, they do their stuff too in relation to that stuff. I stay away from that just because it just doesn't work for me. But nonetheless, I do try to give some indicators and trends, if not patterns, or things that, for me at least, have me looking at how this space is developing and growing moving forward. And so I got a number of stories. New format is more about just, here's the headline, link will be in the description. Y'all can follow up and do your due diligence as appropriate and as I highly, highly recommend you do when it comes to whatever it is you're doing in this crypto thing, because I am not a CPA, lawyer, or financial advisor. So none of what I'm saying you should take as any of that. Hence why I encourage you to do your own due diligence. Yeah, so I'm gonna jump into these stories and then you'll get what I'm putting down, hopefully. All right, here we go. Alrighty, here we are on the first story. First story is Spanish police arrest alleged crypto conspirator linked to North Korea. Now, here's the thing to understand about this particular story is it connects to something that happened before this situation. I don't know how many of y'all remember when there was the guy who went to North Korea for the conference. When they held like their first crypto conference, they invited X number of people. He was an academic researcher, and so he went. He ended up coming back to the States. When I tell you they threw the book at your boy, they threw the book at him. This guy who is, what is this dude's name? It is, where's his name? Alejandro Cawadebenos. Yeah, so they got him in Spain. And basically it was, hey, we know that you were one of the people who were talking with the guy who, the researcher, academic guy who went to North Korea. Here's the irony of this whole thing. They arrest him at the train station. He gets let go by the authorities there. And is like, well, we know the U.S. wants to extradite you, but you can go about your business while you're here. They said they caught him on, fraudulent IDs. That's how they caught him in regards to he didn't have proper identification, and that was like misleading to quote who he was. If he had fraudulent ID stuff, why is it that the authorities let him go? I have another story that follows up a little bit later on that goes partly into the thing of how, let's say, U.S. authorities, as well as other authorities too, let's not make it sound like it's just an only us thing, will tend to say things in legal proceedings that are not 100% reflective in accuracy or truth of what the actual situation was or is. Case in point in this thing, hey, it was the guy, Alejandro, who he's a conspirator because he talked to the other guy who we prosecuted because he went to North Korea and he gave a presentation on an open source technology that everyone has accessibility to. Remember, this is before 2020 when this went down. And we even talked about it here on the Gentleman Crypto Network, right? The point being is I just threw this story in there to let y'all know, like, this is the stuff that's going on. And when you see these stories pop up and how they're like framing things, if you actually read what the dude did in the original situation, he went to give a presentation on a technology that was already available to everyone globally. And stateside government was like, no, you can't go talk about open source technology, and threw him in jail. And now this dude, because he talked with him, I don't know how long they were chasing this guy down, which is like the next thing. It's like, wait, so you're telling me this dude's just been like walking around free and whatever for like the last 3+ years? Like, and y'all just caught up to him? All right, whatever. I don't want to beat this horse down. I just want to put that out to y'all as far as like, there's going to be, I think, this is the pattern of how, and even though this is like a crypto news site, there's going to be the thing of the reframing of past events. If you wasn't there or you don't know somebody who was there, like as far as being active in the community, y'all gonna, it's like, you know, when you see that post that what do they say? Like, I'm gonna tell my kids, then they'll show a picture of like a white musician and be like, this is Michael Jackson. I'm gonna show my kids and there'll be a picture of like 50 cents, but it'd be like some white college kid. It'd be like, I'm gonna tell my kids this was 50 cents back in the day. Like, that's what's going on right now with this thing of like the rehashing of the event, but then putting this spin on it. So anywho, you know, the North Korea works as a boogeyman. It is what it is, right? Link for this will be in the description. I'll move on. Again, another, NK story, right? Um, Here's the thing that gets me with this, and I'm correlating this story with another story. So there's this article here, right? You see who that's in. It is by the Bitcoinist.com. I don't know what to say shout outs to y'all, but y'all doing what y'all do. I understand. Hey, I'm using y'all through my aggregator, the aggregator website that I have, right? So it is what it is. Now, here's the other story. Criminals amass a record 363 million in November 2023. Title wise, these look to be two different stories, right? But when you read into them, what you find is both are making reference to a report that was put out by the company. Who's the company? Trekkw2ks? Yeah, Trekkw2ks. So Trekkw2ks is a cyber security company. They've been heavily pushing their way into the crypto space. Why do I bring this up? Why do I bring this up in between these two articles? I'm not even going to go into the details because what the articles did, and it was actually more articles that were making reference to this report they pushed out, in that there's definitely been a sizable quote amount of money as far as the value worth of it scammed, hacked, and stolen in the crypto space. Yes. What these different news articles did was they were taking different parts of the report to make the story. What I'm really trying to get at to convey to y'all is what I'm seeing, or how I'm interpreting what I'm seeing in these stories, is Trekkw2ks is doing a marketing effort in order to push their authority into the space as like, we are cybersecurity experts and we are knowledgeable about this crypto space as far as the hacks and the scams and stuff are going, because we have reports that we do that quote track, here's how much stuff is being stolen, lost, captured, whatever. Here's where we're also doing analysis to say we have some indicators that show some money went to this group for NK, as well as that there are other actors out there. Some are state sponsored, some are not. In my mind, I think this is a marketing budget that is being pushed over, arguably, because they've been popping up in a number of different articles over the last like 6 months or something, at least for what it sits in my head as. So they've probably been doing something maybe since the beginning of the year. I'm only taking notice to it now that they are popping up in more articles because they're pushing their reports to the platforms and going, hey, write a piece, pick what works for you. I don't have no confirmation of that. I just note that there were several articles that came out this weekend referencing that report. That's my interpretation. Again, I say these things to you to convey that just because it says it's a news site, it doesn't mean it's not marketing shit to you, is the bottom line. And so to me, what this looks like is them positioning themselves for what is going to start playing out later on in the decade, in relation to the crypto space, in relation to how financial crimes are definitely going to go up, how cybersecurity threats are definitely going to go up. The activity of the quote bad actors is definitely going to go up. And they're trying to make sure the people who need to know about their service know about their service. Why? Because that means contract money. And we're not talking like $200, y'all. We're talking like nice six figures and up numbers, right? They trying to be like, what's the name of the other company I can't think of right now? They trying to get that chain analysis money, y'all. That's what they trying to do. They trying to get into the chain analysis market and get that chain analysis money. That's what's going on right here. This is what you're seeing, but it's not being addressed that way. But this is what that is. Yeah, moving over to this next story. Yo, Bitcoin.com. I'm really annoyed with y'all in this how the lower thirds are working out. Yeah. So all right, here we are on this one, right? So court threatens to sanction SEC over legal battle with crypto firms. Here's why. Now, when I was going through this, I was like, all right, what's going on right now? How does this make sense? How does this not make sense? So basically what happens is there is a company that is getting pretty much are getting put through the grinder by the SEC. It's called Debtbox, which is some, whatever crypto related business. And what they did was the SEC went to this judge and was like, hey, judge, we need to freeze this company's assets, all their banking stuff, all their access to funds, because we noticed that they did X, Y, and Z. The judge is like, all right, cool, boom, here you go. Got it. Then it comes back when they are in some like after review thing that it turns out they didn't move or close any bank accounts. And the SEC lawyers and investigators knew that. But when they were talking to the judge in the after part, and then they made another claim on something, no one corrected the part of like, hey, they actually didn't do what you said they did in order to get this legal freezing of their accounts. The judge is calling them out. I don't know what the track record is of this judge, but what I would count this as is it's just the establishment of how law enforcement works, especially when you get into, no, let me not say it that way. There has definitely been a playbook and a pattern, right, that makes up the playbook of tactics that work for law enforcement to get their objectives done. We want to be able to go to court, but we want to be able to make sure that we can win the court case. How do we do that? Well, if you freeze the funds of the defendant who is being charged with something, guess what they can't do? They can't get the best lawyer. They can probably get a lawyer, but they can't get the best lawyer, right? And with that, it then gets into, and also it depends on the charge. Like if y'all ever go back and listen to some of the interviews Reggie Middleton has done about his experience with that process, he drops a couple of gems about how, depending on what charge the SEC hits you with, it limits or it expands how much of your financials they can run through and like literally lock you out of. And that's part of what they had did to him in his court case, where they were trying to cut him off financially so he couldn't have the adequate legal representation, which I probably wonder if that's what was going on with these folks. But nonetheless, this judge called it out. What I would then wonder, this is just me again and how things scratch my brain, is if it happened in this case, and then you start connecting how many of the SEC lawyers have requested for financial records and accounts to be frozen in other cases, if you start going through the transcripts and the paperwork and do a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act, on all of the prior cases to right now, what would that look like when you started going through and actually analyzing what did they say in the beginning and then how things played out after? Again, going through transcripts, going through the depositions and everything and what they were saying. How does that actually look and scale out? Because I would imagine that there are probably more than a few stories where this particular method of limiting a defendant's financial accessibility has been used. But that's just my thought. Also, it also goes into other thing. If a group of people or another company decided to put in a FOIA request, again, Freedom of Information Act, would this count as community policing? And community policing from the standpoint of, as a member of the blockchain crypto community, should there or should there not be a check of the regulators as well as the enforcement agencies that are used to, quote, like go after, or govern this space? Like, is that community policing? Would that be a valid way of community policing? Because again, you put in a FOIA request, you got 30 days for them to respond to what you've requested. And then depending on what it is, you're supposed to get something that lets you know, like, yeah, here's some information. Or if they deny you, they have to give you a valid reason and like quote some other stuff for it. But then you can still petition again. But you got to say something in 30 days. But anywho, that's just my thought. I wonder, does that count as community policing? Would folks be interested in doing that? All right, jumping into this next story. So Americans cling to cash. 93% won't abandon in-person payments. So, all right, this is not directly a crypto story, but I'm gonna make it a crypto story. Again, it's about the articles that scratch my brain. No price talk, right? I don't know how many of y'all remember. All right, so in this article, they're basically saying that the government, Treasury Department, has been meeting the rising demand of $50 bills by printing out more physical fiat and then pushing it into the system, putting it in circulation. There's another article that had came out too over this weekend talking about how the government was looking to like push X amount of money into circulation. And I have a whole thought about that. I didn't go down that rabbit hole with that one because yeah, it went in a whole different direction. But in regards to this, here's the thing. One, who the hell did y'all survey that answered y'all this way? Okay, one. Two, there was a period last year where there were a number of stories circulating about how you couldn't get change back when you went to the store. And so I can only imagine, and it was like within banks, within regular retail stores, you had to have like exact change, or they'd be like, oh, well, we can't give you like the 5 pennies back or the 35 cents back. There was a whole thing about hard coins. And then there was a whole phase and period of talking about, well, you can hardly go to this place and find any place that will accept cash. I don't know how many of y'all was out doing crypto events last year when everything kind of started to open back up, but a number of the crypto events, when you would go to the food vendor stuff or like people who were doing any kind of vending, X amount of them were not trying to take any cash from you. And then so there's the whole thing that was going on because that was that part of like the whole C19 thing where it's like, oh yeah, it's on money, money's dirty. And then that was a narrative that like flared up for a hot minute. And so here we are here where it's just like, oh, so people are looking to hold the money and not spend the money. Here's the other thing to note. I was listening to Danielle DiMartino Booth. She's a ex-Fed employee. She has an interesting book too that breaks down that whole Fed career trajectory thing. But she said something that I was like, wow, I never even thought of that. She was making a point about inflation. And she was saying how it was a Twitter post because she's on my list. But she was making a point about how what was it? Inflation, part of what played into inflation was the government used the Trump bucks and the Biden bucks through a direct injection into the pockets and banks of people who would spend it more than likely. So if you give the average Joe, 200, like let's say $1,000 for like 6 months, they're gonna go out and go buy X, Y, and Z physical, tangible things. They're gonna spend in restaurants. They're gonna go on trips. The trip thing skyrocketed during the whole C19 thing. If you know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of folks who was outside in other countries. Okay, but the point being is that she was making a point of that using this means of financial injection of giving people who would spend, right, which is generally the middle and lower class as far as like economic levels and stuff. Their spending habits are different than the more well-to-do high upper end folks, where when they're spending in a different way of how they're converting their capital buying power and the storage value through assets versus the everyday person who's like, oh, I'm about to go buy this new $1,000 phone. Oh, I'm about to go buy my kids new sneakers. Oh, I'm about to go take this plane trip someplace, right? Different spending habits, different money cycle. That's the whole other part of it. And then remember how many people got into crypto. Man, listen, I was in some of the most interesting places and I would hear people talking about, oh yeah, I put blah, blah, blah amount down on Doge. And then, I got into the NFT thing because X amount of that money injection was from the Trump and Biden bucks. Now we're going through this next thing where all of those programs that allowed you to not pay your mortgage, the student debt stuff, the other programs that were giving you money, all of those things are relatively coming to a close. Granted, there is a UBI. There's a couple of UBI programs that are going to be beta tested across the U.S. Going into 2024, but that's a whole different subject. The point being is that we went from where people had extra money, right, because they were getting the injections into their bank accounts through either the federal side or through their state, which was still from the federal coffers anyway. And then they were going out and pushing it out in their different communities as far as buying at the supermarket local, as well as doing, the traveling and the other more interstate or international stuff. Now these folks don't have that. But what did that do? That injection of money changed the money cycle period of how people took in money and then spent money. And on another side note, like again, look at what was going. I'm going to the side note, but look at what was going on with the pajama traders for Webull and Robinhood. And then the activity that was going on Coinbase exchanges, the whole way that Solana was having their run up, what was going on with Binance, then you had to flip out with Binance US. Like the money has been flowing and moving around, and now the tightening is coming up. So what are people going to do naturally? Oh, I can't leave the money in the bank like that. I still got to do this other stuff. Again, I'm talking about the folks who actually are more apt to spend locally, and locally meaning, or not locally, but the folks who are more apt to spend in the physical market, where the money cycle is different. So example of, again, like if I work a job where I get paid every 2 weeks, or like the 1st and the 15th, if you federal or whatever, you have to wait for that money. You have to do X amount of work yourself to then quote get that. Add in when you don't do no work and then the money's just coming in. What do you think people are going to do? The other part then goes as far as the supply and demand thing of there's people with more money. What do you think the people who have the service or the product are going to do? They're going to go, oh, there's people with more money. Let me up my prices. And that's just what happened, right? I'm not 100% certain. Well, how do I say this? There is a delayed effect of what the government thinks is going on with the people, because when they run their economic models, they don't take certain things into equation as far as the reality of what is going on in the real world, mainstream physical market versus what their economic models are. Those are two different things. There's a number of smarter folks that you can Googly and YouTube about on the subject. Where am I going with this? The closing point is this. Yes, more people are going to hold on to cash if they can, because people are also losing trust in the banking systems. And we see what's going on. Remember, Signature Bank just happened, and then the other 2-3 joints out there in Cali and stuff, right? And then the one bank that they turned over to the FDIC, I think it was, that didn't even have an actual issue. They just came in and was like, yo, y'all are closing down. So, of course, folks aren't looking to put the money in the bank thing, as far as leaving money there like that, unless it's how they're arranging. Let me not run down that road. Let me go to this last thing and say this, right? Folks are going to look for ways to be able to keep value that can't be taken from them. If I got to hold on to the physical dollars, aka the dry, what do they call it, the dry dust? That's what I'm gonna end up on. But last thing, and I'm moving on. Sorry, y'all. The thoughts come to me how they come to me. I promise you, they come to me how they come to me. So the other day, I had went to General Dollar. One of the things that I used to do with like stores like General Dollar was, all right, let me grab a couple of, let me grab some cash out, put that on the side. They started charging $1 for cash back. Folks who know, the cash back was the way they work around going to an ATM and getting hit with that like $3, $4 joint. Depending on who your bank is, they might give you up to like $9 or $12, maybe $15 back, depending on who your bank was. But that's not everybody thing. Now you got it that Dollar General is getting into the ATM business, because now they're charging you for the cash back. I'm like, well, how much longer before the supermarkets do the same thing? Because you can do the cash back at the supermarkets too. The point being is that people are definitely working ways to hold on to physical cash. The companies of whatever it is they do as food vendors, product vendors, or whatever, who deal at the retail level, are picking up on that and making sure that they get their cut. Case in point, Dollar General is now charging $1 for right now. I imagine it will go up maybe next year, if not 2025, to be more than $1, which is still cheaper than most ATMs, in order to get cash out of your financial system besides using an ATM. Just wanted to throw that out there. All right, jumping on to this next story. Okay, Swiss crypto bank rebrands as Amina Bank, expanding global trading services. So the original name for this was SEBE, SEBE Bank, this bank here. So how do I say this? I read through this article, and what I'm realizing is this is actually a public, what's the word I'm looking for? It is a PR release about them rebranding. Interesting thing to note, as I've been saying for a while now, who is the interesting place that sits at the not most southern tip, but at a southern part of the C state, aka CCP? It is Hong Kong. Hong Kong has a very special place in the financial world in the Asian region, as well as like it affects over here in the West too. But the point being is this company's rebranding. It's another example. It's another part of the trend of companies that are crypto related, blockchain related, rebranding, doing acquisitions, making certain other changes in their revenue model or who their public facing C-suite level folks are, as well as acquiring talent, right? They are rebranding and they're looking to expand their global footprint. They will be open. They just signed, but they were awarded the ability to do crypto holdings in Hong Kong. So they just got the license for that in Hong Kong. Again, I was making a point about the Hong Kong situation where Hong Kong is definitely pushing the regulatory framework and friendliness to get the international firms and companies to come in to their jurisdiction and set up business, apply for licenses and stuff like that related to TradeFi, as well as the new crypto stuff, the new asset stuff. The other thing to note, and I'm gonna keep saying this about Hong Kong, is it is one of the ports it is one of the C ports, but it is the financial hub on the BRI, which is the Belt and Road Initiative. And that financial hub is one of the ports that will eventually roll out within next year the CBDC version, the C states version of their CBDC, the digital yen. The digital yuan? All right. Y'all know what I'm talking about. The C state money on the CBD side of it. So I was making a point of when you have that environment where you got precious metals, crypto, CBDCs, and the fiat moving around, like what is that going to look like when you also have the international actors and players in it? Case in point, the Amina Bank will be one of those players going forward. They're also jumping around in some other places. UAE, Abu Dhabi, another bunch of interesting places that they're setting themselves up to. So let me just jump back one for y'all. I know that the stories that I throw out here don't seem flashy. I'm not worried about them seeming flashy. I know that the things that scratch my brain are not the most money grabbing or attention grabbing things. I'm okay with that. My biggest thing about like doing these stories and like trying to, you know, be consistent as far as the filter that I use on stuff here is I know everybody's not going to catch what I'm talking about right now, and probably down the road too. Like it's going to be folks that still don't, you know, catch what I'm talking about. But for the folks who are coming into this space and who are starting to like get into the thing of cross-referencing the industries and the information, y'all will eventually see how this stuff clicks. For the folks who already been listening to me for a minute or who have been in the space for a while, if you get what I'm saying, I appreciate. Thank you. Definitely tell a friend to tell a friend. Share. Like, comments is always open. As I say, we don't delete comments. We do keep receipts though, unless YouTube deletes a comment or two. That's on them. But that ain't us, right? So like, I know the stuff that I be saying. I make a lot of like past tense references. And sometimes I say stuff and I say it in a way where I'm taking for granted the newer folks coming in. I don't mean to be belittling. I don't mean to be ignorant or forgetful of that. That like there's new folks coming in who don't know about a number of things that I might reference. And I'm sorry, but I try to give the historical reference stuff so it gives context of like either this isn't nothing new or this is just a spin off of blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying I know everything. I'm not saying I get everything right. I'm definitely not saying I'm a CPA, a lawyer, or a financial advisor. And I strongly encourage you to do your due diligence. But my biggest thing about this is hopefully I say something that gets you to question what you're doing, what you hope you're able to do, or at least give you some, what's the word? Some push to like ask more questions. Hopefully just ask more questions, like at least ask more questions, right? But anywho, I just wanted to throw that out there because I know sometimes when I go off on these little tangent things, and shout outs to Sergeant Crypto and Satoshi Slim, because they were the ones that's like, yeah, man, like you be saying stuff, but like you forget, man, like you talking to a certain demographic of the crowd who has probably been here X amount of time. And I know that I don't know how much of the folks who actually watch this have been around as long as I have been. And some of y'all might be way more active than me. I know that too, because I definitely have stepped back from a lot of stuff. But nonetheless, I do appreciate, and I do, you know, we just want to throw this info out there for the things that come across my radar. So hopefully it gets some of y'all to at least ask a question. What is this thing about? What am I doing? Why am I not doing it? Why am I doing it? Hopefully. Anywho, as far as this goes, again, it goes to the whole thing of the pattern, the trend of companies are going to rebrand. And the other thing of like why I call this a press release kind of article is it doesn't necessarily make mention of like, well, where do you guys sit in, you know, how many partnerships you have or how much money you've invested in or like what's the volume of, you know, activity that y'all see. It doesn't give no money numbers. It just is about them rebranding and then looking to expand into other markets, aka jurisdictions, because they're going to be able to go, well, we're a new business. We're a new blah, blah, blah. We don't have that old, you know, image and stuff anymore. Granted, they're still keeping X amount of the same clients. But when they go into these new, you know, markets and jurisdictions and they have to apply for those licenses and agreements and stuff like that, it's arguably like a fresh start. So it makes sense for them doing this. I think there will definitely be a number of rebrands in 2024. They're not the only ones. All right. So who is this one? Oh, okay. So Swift launches near instant cross-border transfer to and from Europe. Now, if you know what Swift is the system that is used to sanction our state because of what they did in Ukraine, right? We also do it against a number of other countries. The reason why I'm sharing this story is because here's the thing. We literally already had technology that has existed for more than 15 years when you technically think about it. Remember, Bitcoin is not the first type of protocol or digital quote money, right? It just happens to be the protocol that was the most successful to exemplify, hey, here's how you do uncensored transactions globally in a 24-hour setup. It runs 24 hours. This is what Swift is trying to do. The reason why I bring this article up in particular is because if you know how it works on the back end, or at least have an idea, technically Swift is like a group chat message amongst financing institutions. You have to actually be like a member of it, right? Which I'm not going to run into that rabbit hole, but the point being is the group chat of the members are like, hey, we're going to use this technology as far as communication, this messaging system, to say, I'm getting money from you for this. I'm going to send it over there. Okay, cool. You're going to send it over there. Who's the person to and from? Okay, that's who it is. All right. Let the institution at the lower level know to exchange the value. It's a messaging system. It's an open messaging system that any one of the actor or members of it can use. I realized something today when I was reading this article, because it brought me to another article. Well, not another article, but it brought me to something on Swift's website. It basically says it's a messaging system, but it says it's an open messaging system technology stack used among its members. In crypto, we have this thing about like the whole 51% attack. Here's the, like, when I tell you this dawned on me today like an epiphany. Swift is arguably an example of Bitcoin's protocol as far as the open nature of it, where if you have access to it, you can do back and forth transactions. In crypto, we talk about the thing of like the 51% attack, and how if you can get enough of the members of that thing to agree to do something, you can change the activity, or the history of stuff with activity, blah, 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 right? Swift works on the same thing of the US gets other nations who are members of the Swift thing. It's a 51% attack led by the West. That's how sanctions work. There are 51% attacks on the Swift network led by the West. I say this to you because I would hopefully get y'all to think again, a question. If open technology, and I'm using open technology relative, as far as, again, it's a membered network. If an open technology such as Swift shows us how traditional governmental players are, how the financial institutions are, for how they play that sanction game, and it's a whole thing of, well, I have more might and influence, I'm gonna get these other members, other country banks to agree to not play with this person in the network. That is literally how that works. What do you think those type of folks are gonna do when you integrate more CBDCs and crypto into the bigger multipolar bilateral trade network as far as the financing part of it? I promise you, we're going to repeat ourselves horribly. In my mind, this is an indicator of, if we see what they did with Swift, and when I say they, I'm meaning like major countries, members of the of that network, I can see the same thing playing out. I'm not saying it's tomorrow. I'm not saying it's 2 years from now, but I see that this can end up the same way as the Swift system did. I'm hoping it doesn't, personally. And that's my correlation to the whole like crypto thing. It's not a crypto quote story per se, but I think that the pattern of behavior that it shows can be related to crypto, as far as how we see these parties of interest looking to hold control or sway or influence over what goes on in a network, especially when we talk about like DeFi and decentralized or uncensorable protocols or blockchains, the whole cross-border thing, borders don't matter. I've been covering the stories for months now. Like there's legal things going on where you got digital sovereignty for the country or for the company. You got data sovereignty for the individual person. There's a whole question about how do you even exercise your digital or your financial, your economic sovereignty. Is that based on your jurisdiction or your citizenship? How do you do beyond the second tier of data generation? How do you enforce that? Like, yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff, man, that is, it's a bigger thing than just like the crypto thing. But, you know, you sit me down, I can find 101 ways to connect some stuff to crypto. But anywho, I wanted to throw this story out. For those folks who are in the EU, this is, this is actually at the bilateral, like the government trade level. So it's not even a retail level thing. The other thing to note is, arguably, this is Swift's attempt to play catch up to CIPS, CIPS, which is a system that went online that's like, I think more than 50 Asian countries are a part of it. And they actually operate on it. They were already doing the near real time transaction of in and out for the Asian region. So yeah, Swift is playing catch up. But yeah, I'm gonna leave that there, y'all. I'm rambling. Sorry, it's late. It's late. It's late. All right. So this next story here, right? Circle firmly denies accusations of funding You see who it is on the screen. I don't want to mess around. I've been telling y'all I'm trying to make sure, at least for my segment, I stay away from saying certain things because the algos and how YouTube works now, it transcribes your audios. And I think there's a filter thing going on with the audios, the audio transcriptions, and it plays into your discovery. But anywho, so Circle comes out and says this. In this article, it basically is Circle countering something that was said by it was Elizabeth Warren and someone else said it. It was Elizabeth Warren and so what Sherrod Brown. So these two senators, these two senators are in a hearing or in some committee thing, and then they throw out Circle. They make this allegation in relation to Circle being a part of a unintended network that gave access to these two groups being able to move some money around. And that was because there was another third-party nonprofit group that made the allegation that, hey, Circle was helping fund these T groups. Elizabeth Warren and Senator Brown repeat this. I don't know if Elizabeth Warren is particularly targeting Circle for a reason, but here's what I do know. And this goes to show the whole thing about the intransparency of Circle and of how stablecoins work. If it was 100% absolute, right? Like, he's not saying nothing technical in this whole thing. He's not saying, listen, just go look at our chain. You can see everything right there. Nope, not what he's saying at all. He's just making a blanket public legal presentation of these are false allegations. This is all like rumor mill stuff. They don't know what we're talking about. We adhere to regulations. We help the Secret Service, blah, 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 blah. Which then gets my brain to scratching to go, I bet you if somebody actually did some real forensics on your on-chain stuff, your full actual line item accounting of what your bank stuff looks like, and like followed everything through, I imagine somewhere in there you could find something, especially as far as like example. And I brought this example up the other day too about like how the accounting of Bitcoin works in particular, as far as the UTXO stuff of where it can be 3 different inputs that go into making, one Bitcoin, not stats, but like a Bitcoin. So if you say like it's a 0.1 Bitcoin, how many inputs went into making that 0.1 as far as like the wallet backend is concerned, right? So imagine you do X amount of the transference of cash into the Bitcoin. It's spread across like 3 different wallets. You know that the cash came from this group or one of the groups or whatever. Like, how do you say no unequivocally? In my mind, you can't. Not to mention, Circle is pegged to the dollar. It's not backed by the USD. It's a basket of financial instruments. So in my mind, it's like, I hear you, but like, who got her to start throwing your name out publicly? Who got this group over here to come and throw your name out publicly? It makes me wonder if Circle might have an issue come next year. I don't know. Just throwing it out there. You could disagree or agree with me. We'll see what happens come next year if Circle starts, like, the name starts making the rounds in certain departments. We'll see what happens. Just throwing it out there as is this an indicator or something? I don't know exactly. So as you saw in the title, Jack Dorsey hates Ordinals. Now, I do not know that for a fact at all. I've never actually listened to what he says about it. That definitely was a clickbait thing. I will say this, though. It came out last week about him doing the Ocean thing. He's funding that Ocean company that's supposed to deal with approaching a new way of Bitcoin mining. Now, the issue, my initial issue when I seen the post, and I had tagged, because it was on Twitter, I tagged Zay in it, 3D, Crypto Mind, Manyabiz, and a couple other people. And I was like, this sounds good, but I don't know if I can trust it. Why? Because we just found out that F2 Pool censors transactions for OFAC. Whoever's on the OFAC sanction list and they get the the thing, they're doing censorship stuff as far as that's concerned in their mining pool. The issue as far as this mining thing goes, where we talk about like what's uncensorable and how Bitcoin's protocol and the network is accessible to anyone. This situation here, and crossing it with the other F2 Pool, F2 Pool mining situation, we're moving in the direction of censorship on the Bitcoin protocol, and not just like, oh, you're on a blacklist, or oh, you're on a centralized exchange and we're going to freeze your funds. The issue at the mining pool level, and it's not about the payment stuff. And I'm gonna get into something else that happened too in the post conversation wise, because I tagged Zay in it too. And Zay was like, yeah, I was supposed to be at that event when he made the announcement, but whatever it is, he didn't make it. The thing that gets me is because part of the talk, the quotable that came out of that event was, oh, we're gonna look to do a different way to make sure that the miners can get paid. And that quote adds into the decentralization, pro argument. And it's like, no, but that's not the issue. The issue is the way that if the company who's hosting the miners or giving access to the quote network decide that they're going to block transactions at their end, which is how F2 pool is designed. It's designed at the company end to be able to put in filters and block things. That's the same thing that's being pushed into this company here against Ordinals. There's a video that came out a couple months ago. Again, I keep saying this whole thing of like, I make reference to X amount of past events and stories because it gives context and it gives reference to like, this isn't a new thing, or like, here's why I take this stance on something. Andreas Antonopoulos was talking about, I forgot what the particular protocol is in the Bitcoin's blockchain that makes it where like, no, you can't filter or stop spam transactions or even the Ordinals thing on the Bitcoin network. So what's going on here is for the mining setup that's going to be happening through Ocean, they're filtering Ordinal transactions. It doesn't mean it has stopped Ordinals from being added into the Bitcoin's Satoshis, because that's what it's like. Ordinals are inscriptions that are put at the Satoshi level. So it doesn't stop Ordinals, but what it does do is it creates the ability to be able to stop a type of transaction from happening. Now, again, coming back to the whole thing about Swift that I just talked about, right? It's a messaging network that is a member-based network. What happens when you get enough of the members to be like, we won't allow that person to play anymore in our network? It's a form of censorship. It's a form of like filtering, right? It's a form of controlling the network in a way that it was not initially designed. Granted, even Ordinals is a part of doing something in the network that was not a part of the initial thing like that. But nonetheless, this is what's going on in the space right now. You have some folks who are pro and happy that Jack is doing this, and then you have other folks like myself, maybe not as technical about it, but there are definitely other folks along my side who are like, I don't know if this is actually a good thing. And then now that this part came out, I'm like, I'm even less inclined. And I'm not telling you how to feel about this. Definitely do your own diligence. Link for this will be in the description. You can definitely follow up. I'm not telling you how to feel about this or take this. I just note that there's a reason why at the base layer of the Bitcoin protocol, we don't look to implement things like lines of code that will allow for the filtering or the censoring of transactions. We may not like spam, we may not like Ordinals, but once you open the door to be able to filter or censor or change or augment or reverse a transaction on a network, that's Pandora's box. And there's nothing you could do to reverse that quote. And so in my mind, I'm not sold on this direction that Jack is going in, because it's including adding in technology that will allow for censorship. I might not agree with what should or shouldn't be censored, but you introduce the tech to do it. Making a reference back to the Swift network thing. You get enough members to agree to be like, oh, we should censor that person. How long do you think before this, and what's the name of this protocol? What is the name of this protocol? It is called, what is it, the knot? Where did I see it at? Damn, I'm trying to find the name of the protocol that somebody made that they're adding into this platform. But nonetheless, the point being is, I'm not sold on this. If you're a Bitcoin #1 fan person, you might want to look into this. If you're in mining, you might want to look into this. You don't have to look into anything. I'm just saying, if that's your wheelhouse, you might want to, because this might be a positive or negative thing for you. Indicator trend-wise, we are definitely on the trend of people, companies, governments trying to find more ways of censoring Bitcoin, or at least influencing who has access versus who doesn't. That's definitely a thing. is this an indicator of a new protocol that could reach mass adoption and be applied in different ways beyond ordinals? It's possible. Time will tell. We'll see how 2024, 2025 play out. On to this next joint. This joint. This story here. Come on. All right. Beijing interim court affirms human contribution to AI art. All right, listen. So this is not a crypto story directly, but I guarantee you 100%, and I'm not saying this as legal advice or CPA or none of that, but just for how it reads, this will come into the crypto space via the NFT market. Basically what happens is some guy makes an NFT, not an NFT, he makes an AI generated art piece. Somebody else uses it in some WeChat thing or with something else. The guy who originally made the AI generated art finds out about it and then says, hey, stop that. You can't do that. That's mine. I made that. I don't want you to use it for that. Guy probably tells him, screw off, whatever. I'm not paying attention to you. So he takes him to court. Chinese court is like, yo, I messed up. Okay. So the Beijing court is like, listen, based on what we understand about how the person contributed to fixing, augmented, and showing their creativity in the process and aesthetic of this generative art piece. Like they took their time to do these things to make it look how they wanted it. That's the creativity part. That's the human input element part. We think that you can then copyright AI. This is opposite of what the US Copyright Office has done here in the States, where they're like, nah, you can't be any kind of, robot or system or algo or AI or whatever and get copyright protection on stuff generated using AI. There's a case that came out last year where the guy who made his own generative AI and then had the company was popping out stuff and then was trying to file copyright on his stuff that the AI he created. This, I don't know how fast we're going to see it come into the NFT space. I don't know what company is going to be the first one here in the States to be like, okay, we now have a feature on where you could like do some kind of interim copyright patent or copyright process. I don't know. I don't know exactly how this would play out, because what also got me is this is the first time I even heard this story. It already happened and went through and everything. And I'm like, well, how long was the court process? Like, when did this initially drop? But the point being is, indicator. This is a notable court system. Now the question is, how will this come back over here in the West, right? What does this mean for how it will look in the NFT marketplaces? Who's going to look to say, well, how do we capitalize on this new court situation here? Or do we wait for another 6 months to see if there's a ripple effect that happens in what the creators are doing as individuals, as companies? Do we see something going on within the creating part of the market, and how they're looking to push for copyrights based on what's going on in the Beijing court? I don't know. I just know this is something to put on the radar, and then we'll see how it's going to play out as far as our legal side, but more so like, what is the creative space, the creators, there we go. What are the creators going to do that are over here in the West? Or the creators who are in the East who will push digital products, AI generated art, that it's global, it's on the internet, right? But there's a whole thing again about the whole digital sovereignty stuff, the data sovereignty thing, like the digital border. There's definitely a thing going on with this, like in enforcing digital borders. So what does that mean? I don't know exactly. I just know in my mind how this is scratching my brain. This is an indicator. And we're going to see what happens in 2024, in which, what is that, less than 30 days now. 2024 is around the corner. 2024 is like at the corner. Like, we're looking at it because it's less than 30 days. Yeah, something to keep on the radar. Again, like I said, it's not directly crypto, but this will definitely cross over into the space via the NFT market. And I don't know if this, like, the scams are going to be crazy. The scams are going to be crazy. And the number of companies and projects that are going to pop up and use the marketing of, oh, this is a copywritten piece, I can already see that coming. Like, that's going to happen. But yeah, we're going to see how this play out next year, and what the regulatory folks here in the States do, as well as what the creators do. And how will the buyers appreciate or dislike this move here of what comes out of AI generated copywritten art. We'll see. All right, next joint. Oh, this. All right, so Brazil set to introduce 15% tax on income held abroad. Initial thought process was, okay, either there's a sizable part of their population involved in crypto who has overseas activity or accounts. And then as I read through it a little bit more, it's like, okay, wait, so the local taxes is like 8%? Huh, okay. That's interesting. So my rethink on it is Brazil's trying to play two games, and it's also the game that most of the other IRS-like agencies and departments are playing across the globe. Oh, even though governments were pumping money into the system as far as going to people at the retail level, and it made for an artificial surplus of people, quote, having money, they're not realistic in that you were artificially pumping capital in. People really don't have that money, but you think you can capture this value based on what you saw in the previous 15, 24 months that was artificial, but you're making policies and you're making regulation and enforcing policies based on an artificial pump that was done from the government side. Crazy, but that's what's going on right now. So with this Brazil situation, if you're at a local company, like what is that, Trekkw2ks? I think that's one of the larger ones down there in Brazil. But anywho, 8% if you hold your stuff local. This is arguably a protectionist policy for what they think the growing industry is going to be once they get more of the local user base into or onboarded into crypto exchanges or some kind of crypto related activity. And at the same time, it's like, well, we know that we have some, whales and stuff who are out there on foreign exchanges. And what we want to do is we want to get more of the transportation information. Because what was that, like a week or two ago, I covered the thing about the World Economic Forum it was Europe. Europe is pushing a regulatory thing where they want to have more information between the IRS related agencies and the exchanges, the centralized exchanges, no matter the jurisdiction. So it doesn't matter what exchange you're on, they're still going to report to your home country, hey, this is how much activity this person's doing on our exchange. That's part of what Brazil is going for, is getting more information from the foreign exchanges, but they're also doing it where they're penalizing the people with a higher tax to get them to stay in the Brazilian exchange market. So only deal with local Brazilian exchanges. That's at least my take on it. As for how the people actually adopt and react to it, I don't know. I haven't talked to anybody from Brazil in a while. I got to start making some reach outs to see, like, what does this look like on ground? If anybody is from that way, comments is open. DM me. Twitter is there. Please, I'd be interested to hear your take on this. But this is how it looks to me as the outsider, and how I understand some of what these government bag chasers think is going on in the space versus what's actually going on in space, and then how there's that thing of like, we got to do a level of protectionism for our industry. That's at least my take on it. I could be way off though. Remember that. I'm not a CPA lawyer. Jumping on to this next joint. Flare Labs, or last joint. Flare Labs brings smart contracts to Bitcoin Doge on testnet. Okay, so initially when I read this, I'm like, oh, okay, this sounds kind of interesting. How are you doing this? Then as I read further into it, again, just because it says it's a news website, it doesn't mean it's not marketing a product or service to you. This turns out to be a press release article, where what's being framed is like, hey, there's a new thing called Flare Labs. They have this thing called, what is it, Flare Facets? I might be saying that wrong, but whatever. And so the idea is it's its own network blockchain thing, and they're basically doing a wrap Bitcoin or wrap Dogecoin, honestly, because it's not on the Bitcoin protocol. So if it's off of the Bitcoin protocol, it's basically a wrapped whatever, and it's arguably a derivative. Now, and then of course the incentive is if you bring over your hard crypto, being Bitcoin, and Doge, your reward for using our smart contracts is their token. So it's an extraction of value because you're giving them the hard asset for them to give you the made up derivative thing. That's at least my take on it. It don't mean I'm wrong, but it doesn't mean it's a quote negative thing. I should say it that way. A lot of the space is multiples of derivatives and some kind of financial instrument and wizardry, right? That's a whole part of smart contracts in the DeFi part of the space, right? It's technical financial assets or mechanisms, right? And you can do different things to be able to finance the physical market, aka give me your hard crypto, Bitcoin, and then I'll do some other fancy stuff to finance it within this other economic, financial, not finance, derivative environment. There we go. That's what I was trying to look for. Again, folks, do your diligence, do your research. This joint sounds good right now, and then come 9 months down the road, they get slapped with something by one of the agencies, and they play the Celsius handbook, and all of a sudden, everyone who like gave in their Bitcoin to do whatever with this wrap smart contract stuff, y'all are going to be treated like regular bank depositors, and you're not getting your stuff back if you did not invest in the original company itself as a not a whale. What do they call them? As a VC or something? Like, I don't know, but it's giving me Terra Luna memories, because the whole idea of give me your Bitcoin and then I'll give you some Terra Luna coins. Like, that's my take on it. I'm gonna leave that there. I'm gonna close it out. I definitely ran kind of long on this. As I say, like, I appreciate the folks who interact with me in the chat. I appreciate the folks who come up this early in the morning, because not everybody's on the East Coast time, 08 as it is. I appreciate the folks who are just finding me. I know I don't do the price talk stuff, and I definitely have one too. Thanks for rocking through this whole thing with me, I guess to say. Anywho, close it out. It's done late, as you can see. And so, as I say, have a P over B day, aka productive over busy day. If it can't be that, at least be in a safe place, in a safe space, and in good company. And from one human to the next, that is the best thing that I can wish for y'all. And yeah, have it. All right, I'm tired. It's late.